Today, I'm giving you 3 exercises that are gonna help you get rid of the tight hips when you're squatting. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Move Better Monday segment. Babak, Owen here. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please, it would be a huge help for me to grow this channel. So click that like button, click that bell icon so you'll get notified when the next segment comes out. All right, squatting is probably one of the most common exercises that's used in the gym to, really work on the legs. It's gonna build strength, helps you build muscle. It's super functional. It helps athletes with their performance. It honestly is one of my favorite exercises, one of my go-to exercises. It tells me a lot about the athletes. But there does come a time when some of my clients start noticing that they're getting a little bit of tension or tightness in the front of their hip when they are squatting. And usually this is going to start coming about when you are trying to improve your depth, or when you're trying to get low, basically get to that flat, parallel thigh bone position with the ground. Now, there is a chance that this does come back to you having tight hips and needing to be more flexible. If that's the case, you could check out an episode that I posted linked right above here on how to release a tight hip flexor, or how to get some more movement or some more space in the front of the hip. But assuming you've already done that, and you've already done a ton of stretching, and you still aren't getting the relief, and you still aren't able to really get into the bottom position of that squat without feeling a lot or tremendous amount of tightness in the front of the hip, and it feels almost like you're walking into a wall. Well, in that case, you're probably gonna wanna have to look somewhere else outside of flexibility. Usually this is gonna come from a lack of function in the hamstring with the glute. The problem is that it's not actually just there. It doesn't really just stem from there. This actually pulls itself back to just being a part of the core function as well. So your core may not be firing the way it should be as well. So here's the backstory. The hip flexor itself acts as a stabilizer in many cases, especially when you aren't trying to bring the knee up towards your chest, or you aren't trying to flex at the hip. It does act as a stabilizer because it does attach right onto the low spine. Let me just get 1 second. All right, so your hip flexor actually does attach on the low back here. It attaches from the sides, and then it pulls down. So it comes underneath all the organs, wraps into the front, and attaches onto the front of your leg. So it actually acts as a lifter of the knee. The problem is that if you're not doing any lifting of the knee, it acts to stabilize the low spine as well. So what happens is, when you don't have a proper, kind of counterpart to that, which would be your core, your body looks to use your hip flexor as a stabilizer. And usually when a muscle feels cramped or feels really tight in an area where it shouldn't be, and it should feel very loose and comfortable, it usually means that you're dealing with a lack of function somewhere else, or in its opposing or counterpart muscle. The quick way to test that would be to line your back, take your knee and drive it up to your chest. If you don't feel that crazy tension, that same tension, usually that's coming to a function issue. You're lacking function in the core, and that's relating and translating back down to poor function of the glutes and the hamstrings. Just a side note here, if you are feeling a weird pinch when you drive your knee to your chest, when you're lying on your back and you're hugging your knee into your chest, you're feeling a weird, like a sharp pinch in your hip, that is actually called a hip impingement. It's kind of fixed in the same way, so a lot of these exercises are still gonna relate to it, but I would still take that time to go see a manual therapist, go see an athletic therapist, physiotherapist, osteopath. Someone's gonna have some expertise in that realm that's gonna be able to kind of dissect that and make sure that's actually what that is. Okay, so you've cleared off a hip impingement, you've cleared off flexibility, and now we need to get into actually strengthening the core and the lower body muscles, the glutes and the hamstrings. What are we gonna do? Well, step 1 is gonna be very simple. We're gonna start off with a basic core exercise. Now, this core exercise is actually gonna help kind of train the hip flexor to work with the core. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna lie on our back. We're gonna let our knees basically come up to that 90-degree position. We're gonna slowly drop one leg at a time, keeping the knees bent to hit the ground, come back up, switch and alternate to the other side, tap and come back up. The entire time we're doing this, we wanna make sure of one thing, making sure that the back doesn't move. We don't want the back to be pressed into the ground. We want it to maintain a nice neutral spine position. That basically means, when I grab this skeleton over here, you basically want to maintain that natural curve that's occurring here at the low back. A lot of people want to straighten out that back, and they're trying to guide you to take this spine, this low spine, and push it right into the ground. The problem is, when you do that, you're actually educating yourself to stand up with a flat back position and walk all weird and you don't have any control. It's just not natural. Don't do it. So you're lying down on your back, arch is nice and the back is nice and arched. You've got a nice curvature in the spine. You're gonna be dropping your leg to touch the ground. You're gonna do about 10 per side. Again, don't worry about sets and reps. I'm just throwing the numbers out there. It will be down in the description section below. Exercise number 2 will be a bear plank. This is a great exercise that's gonna incorporate a number of things, including the ability to stay in a tight hip position, still fire the core, and maintain a good posture. You're gonna get on all fours, and all you're gonna do is simply lift your knees up off the ground by about an inch. That's it, that's all. You're gonna hold that position for about 30 seconds. Exercise number 3 is one of my favorite exercises, the hip bridge. Now this requires the first 2 exercises to really prime the core, get it to stabilize. From there, what you're gonna do is you're gonna bend your knees, lying on your back, obviously bend your knees, lift your butt up in the air. You're gonna hold that position for 10 seconds. Then you're gonna go up and down 10 times without pausing at the top for more than a second. The hip bridge is going to activate the glute and the hamstring, but it's also gonna call upon the core. Now, one way to know that if your back is actually doing the work or your butt and your hamstring are doing the work is if you feel it on the back, your core's not firing. So when your core fires, you're gonna be able to send that signal down to your hip muscles, your hip extending muscles, hamstrings and glutes, and allow you to lift that butt up. Now, this is a progressive routine. You're going to have to do this over a long period of time to build up that strength in your hamstrings and your glutes and the activation and that kind of coupling with the core over a long period of time to catch up to the strength of your quads. I would also recommend trying to make the hip bridge a little bit harder. You can do this after a couple of weeks of basically just pulling one knee up off the ground and doing it single leg. Now, does this mean that this is all you should be doing for the core and you're good to go? No, I think the core is a very functional part of the body. You demand a lot of it, and I think if you want to take your core to the next level, I've actually put together a 12-week core training system. This system is going to basically run you from the basics, walk you through it in a detailed fashion for 12 weeks, and bring you from basically not really understanding how to function with the core to what my athletes are doing for their off seasons when they're going into that competitive season that they need to function better. And a link to my 12-week system will be put in the description below so you can get to that right away. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments section, and I will see you guys next time.